Hello, my name is Alun. My pronouns are he, him, and today I am facilitating the first of 7 sessions of Free from the Yoke. Free from the Yoke is a game based on legacy, uh, life among the ruins, but it shifts from the kind of post-apocalyptic of the original legacy to a medieval setting, as you see behind me. In my mind, I am seeing the default setting, which is kind of the interface between Eastern Europe and, the Asian steppelands. And so behind me is a lift, I think, from something you might reasonably describe as Kievan Rus. But I want to reassure the players, I know next to nothing about this period or location, and therefore we will be creating a world that may be vaguely adjacent to human history on the Eurasian continent. I do want to say, because the players have been are being very brave in a way, because I have been upfront about the fact that this is a game, or Legacy generally has been a game that has intimidated me for some time, and this is Lowell Francis's fault. He ran a very interesting Gauntlet podcast seminar the other week. That though I have played some Legacy, I finally have had the gumption to try to run it. So, well done for the players for being prepared to be part of my first ever Legacy sessions. So this is set in medieval times. I mean, the game pitches it at 12th to 15th century. So this is kind of pre-gunpowder, but reasonably well-established societies conceivably. We'll find out how that plays in practice. I think that's probably all I want to say for the minute. We have another player joining us, but it's some ungodly hour of the morning where he is, and so he'll be joining us when he's kind of had a cup of coffee. So let me just start by asking the players to introduce themselves, and then I'll go back and do a little bit more cats and a little bit more safety tools. So in the order I can see you, Jason, say hello and tell us about your pronouns.
Hello, I am Jason. I use he, him pronouns.
And sorry, I should say, and tell us anything else you want us to know about you. I should be more
Oh,
polite
okay.
than that.
Let's see. I've never played Free from the Yoke. I did buy it a while ago because I was at a point where I was wanting to make some sort of Dune game, and people said, "Oh, maybe that would be a good one." And I looked at it. I said, "Wasn't good for that," but I'm glad to play it. I'm a history nerd, so as I'm reading the rules, I'm thinking of all kinds of historical analogs that I might bring into our game. So if you're also a history nerd, you'll see that me doing that. What else? And then as I was reading it too, I don't know if you guys are computer gamers, but I've thought a lot of this, the setting of the Witcher games. That's
Yeah,
me.
I mean the publisher kind of says Game of Thronesy, because it operates on these two levels, the higher level houses and the individual player characters. But I think Witcher is, in terms of touch and feel, I think Witcher is a good touchstone. Dan, say hello. Tell us about your pronouns. Tell us anything else you want us to know.
Hello, my name is Dan Brown. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm super excited to, first of all, play with Alan. Again, we rarely get to play together given time zone issues, so that is super exciting. And I've been intrigued by Legacy for some of the reasons Alan mentioned. The fact that it operates on 2 levels is really intriguing to me, and that we can see the generational shifts is one of the things that's particularly intriguing. The idea of quick characters is also particularly intriguing to me. I design games myself. I'm working on a game now called City of Whispers, which also sort of tries to operate on 2 levels, but it's more street and faction level in a fantasy city. And that's me.
And let me, just before I go on to Joe, just say hi, Alex. Good to see you. I don't think we've played together, so welcome. We've literally just started introductions, so I'm going to go to Joe, and then I'll come to you just to say hello. So Joe, say hello. Tell us about your pronouns. Tell us anything else you want us to know about you as a player.
Hello, I am Joe. He, him. I have the same sort of off and on love affair with Legacy that everyone else here appears to have. Love, hate, love, whatever you want to call it, right? intriguing and intimidating all at once, right? And I believe Jason ran the very first Gauntlet game I played in, a Dark Conspiracy, your Dark Conspiracy game, Alan. So that's our fun fact for the day. Different tone, I guess, today, but we'll see.
Who knows? Who knows where this could go? That is a fascinating fact. Yes. So, Alex, say hello. Tell us about your pronouns. Tell us anything else you want to know. You want us to know about you as a player.
I'm Alex Greenshields. It's very early, so I may be slightly less verbose than I normally am. I'm currently in Dan's game that he's working on, his PBTA game. Yeah, and that's about it for me this morning. I haven't had my coffee yet, literally. So
well, look,
I may come up with interesting tidbits as we go along.
Go get a cup of coffee, Alex. Don't feel pressured to kind of just, okay, good. Because I have to tell you, Alex, normally in my games, Joe claims to be the earliest riser, but he is a whole time zone east of you. So 2 time zones east of you. So this is there is nowhere further west than you, Alex, at the minute that I've ever played with. So we're all flattered you got up for this.
I'm GMT -8.
Ouch. Well, there is no greater compliment you can pay. Thank you. Because I am GMT, folks. So it's the start of my afternoon. So thank you for that. Now, Alex, I was just saying to the others before we started, normally I would do character creation, all the rest offline, and then we just start playing. But I am quite, because I've never run this, I'm quite keen to get a record of how this goes. So, and in fact, realistically, folks, this session 0 may well take up most of this session, a little bit of the next one. But I do want to just finish my cats conversation, because as I say, the way this will run is that we are going to spend most of this session creating the environment in which we're going to be playing, because the thing about the legacy games, and this is no exception to that, is that they operate on 2 levels, the house level and then the character level, and we zoom in and zoom out between these intervals. And so we'll begin by generating those houses, and the setup for this game is that a generation ago, this area of this land, as it's described in the rules, was freed by a rebellion, and all of these houses were involved in that rebellion, and freed from the tyranny of the empire, the eponymous empire that they'd driven away. And so much of what we're going to spend this session doing is going to be about creating the history of this land, the history of these houses, and finding out more about them. And also creating what I think is a fascinating change from legacy, the core legacy to this game, is we'll also be creating what in the game is called the arbiter. And I think the arbiter is described as something between an environment, the GM, and a kind of interfering parent. So the arbiter is a kind of driving force behind the game that may kind of surface in it. So that's what we're going to do. In terms of the tone, we've talked a little bit about that. For me, it is, I think, and since Jason mentioned it, I can't get it out of my mind now. I think it does kind of have a touchstone connection to the Witcherverse. But it is a land, it is a time when conceivably life was cheap and life was short. We are going to be seeing whether these characters survive through seasons and years, and we might even in our 7 sessions get as far as what's called a turning of the age. I'm certainly hoping we're going to turn a season, but we'll see how that goes. Because there is kind of almost inherent in the game a degree of at least competition between the houses, which may or may not transfer down to kind of competition between the player characters. and it's also possible that we'll encounter some adult themes. We will therefore be playing with the community within the community's code of conduct, and we'll be using a layered set of safety tools. And those safety tools are, we're going to have lines and veils, and I'd refer the players to, there's a lines and veils tab in the character keeper. I've put some starting ones in there. Feel free to up a veil I've put into a line if that's comfortable. There's also a column for ask first. The only one I've set there so far is PC betrayal, because that's possible in the game. But if you want to up that to a veil or a line, then we'll work within that. So lines is stuff, for those of you out there who aren't familiar with these safety tools, lines are things that will not appear in the fiction. Veils are things which may appear in the fiction, but we will draw a discrete curtain. Because I'm aging and British, sex is always veiled in my games. But because lines and veils, we're setting those up in advance, stuff can come up in a game that can surprise you, and you think, oh, hang on, I'm not very comfortable with that. And so we're also playing with the X card. I'll say all the players, the best way to play the X card for me is to show me the X, because I tend to be looking at your faces rather than the chat. But if you're more comfortable putting that in the chat, or in fact, the dice room has an X card button that you can hit, that's fine. If I don't appear to react to an X card played in the chat or anywhere else, folks, please, somebody who spots it, draw my attention to it. It's just I probably may have been looking at your face and not looking somewhere else. And I want to stress about the X card that you can play it for anything, right? I've had people play the X card, and those of you who played with me before will be bored with this example, but someone's brother-in-law, I attached the name to an NPC of their brother-in-law, and then that NPC started doing some very unpleasant things, and they became uncomfortable with that. X card, change the name of the NPC. It's easy. So it needn't be a big thing. And the other thing I want to say with the X card is, just because something comes up and you think, oh, I'm okay with that, and then it comes up again and you think, oh, actually, I'm not. Just because you didn't play the X card the first time doesn't mean you can't play it later. Yeah, either later in the session or in a subsequent session. The X card is there to be used, under whatever circumstances. And if one of you thinks that we're sailing a little bit too close to a line or a veil, the X card is a great way just to kind of put a pause in the session, put a pause in the gameplay, and just say, hang on, I'm just checking in where this is going, because I'm a bit nervous it might be going towards X, and that's always very helpful. There's also the possibility, folks, that something will go on in the world behind you. It's probably less the case for Alex, because nobody else is up. But it could be that something goes on in the real world. You need to go and answer the door, whatever. Please do that. We're running with an open door. We'd like to think you'll come back. If you can let us know how long you'll be away, that's really helpful. And then we'll just reintegrate you into play. But of course, the other use of the open door is, if this turns out not to be the game you thought it was going to be, and you're not having a good time, for goodness sake, the open door is there. Life's too short to spend time staring at the screen when you're not enjoying yourself. So that's what the open door is for. And increasingly, I think of the debrief at the end. We're going to use stars and wishes at the end of these sessions. I think of that increasingly as a safety tool, because it's just a chance to highlight the stuff people enjoyed and hopefully want to see more of, and also to highlight the stuff that they were less sure about and they'd like to kind of see shrink out of future games. So that's my cats discussion. I'm assuming that you're going to put some more lines and veils. We'll check in on those before we start. But now I guess we want to make a start on house creation. Gee whiz, I've put this off long enough. So let me just go back around the table, because we've had a little bit of discussion off screen about which houses people had preferences for. I just want to check in on where we are with that. So again, in no particular order, but I'm going to start with Jason, because I've written you down on my sheet first. Jason, you had some thoughts. Where are you now in terms of house?
I believe I would like to be the church.
Fine. We're using shorthand for these houses, folks, because they're a bit of a mouthful. If you want to know the details, we will come into that in a bit. Dan, where are you on house choice?
I'm going to do the Forgers of the Marbled City.
Great.
It brings me to a very quick question, and that is Forgers, as framed here, are generally kind of architects and I guess metalsmiths. Are we doing any kind of magic or steampunky or anything like that? Should we think of these folks as Jason is all in?
Well,
so I guess my question
yeah,
is,
I mean, I think we can play, you know, this, while this is loosely historically set, we are not bound by that.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I found myself thinking there are things called rituals in this game. Now, the way it's written is that those rituals are vaguely supernatural and vaguely connected to the land. Now, I don't see why it shouldn't be possible to enact a ritual that creates something that didn't exist historically, because, you know, that would make sense to me. The specific example was a very mundane one, you know, that crossbows don't crop up anywhere in the rules. But they're a damn sight easier to use than longbows, and that might be, you know, so I think anything from that through to, you know, I don't know, we'll see where it goes. Yeah, is that okay? Joe, you had a thought? Where are you now?
We will be the Lords of the Steppe.
The Horselords of the Steppe. Okay, and Alex, I noticed you came up with a thought. Are you still in that place, or where are you?
Yeah, family, the newfound family sounds good for me.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I mean, and to stress though, again, you know, the impression created behind me is a fairly homogeneous culture. I do want to stress that the culture was a lot more homogeneous than heterogeneous than what this picture behind me suggests. And the newfound family is an interesting one because they are kind of a collection of incomers. So that's an interesting one to explore. Okay, so we have some choices. Thank you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, for now, just hide the ones we don't need. So we don't need those. We don't need the teachers. We don't need the merchants. There we go. Okay, so we start by adding some landmarks to the map. So let me just share the map with you. If you go to the lines and veils, you see there is a link to the map. I'll share my screen on this one, so just so people know what we're working with here. Part of the joy of this game is that we get to literally create collaboratively the world in which we're going to be playing. And at the minute, you will see it is entirely empty. I am trying to kind of make this as simple to do as possible, because my experience of playing Legacy is that the map making can get very long-winded as people kind of search for images and all the rest. So I've tried to boil this down to very straightforwardly. You'll see on the right-hand side there that there's an initial key. And so if when the time comes you want to put a city in, you just, you know, highlight that, Control C, Control V if you're using a PC, and then you can just put it wherever you want it. Jobs are good. And similarly with, you know, and you can put that anywhere you like. Yeah. And let me stress, this is an indicative map. We will refine it over time. And I have warned the players that I may want to indulge my my urge to draw a pucker map in Wonder Draft and offer it back to them between now and next time. So so there is the map. So let us begin then. I'm gonna try and stick with the order I can see you in. So let me start with you, Jason. And ask you some questions about the Church of Forgotten Lands. Now it says, your religion is not native to these lands. It was carried here by the Empire like a seed lodged in a bear's pelt, but it soon found believers. The outlawed gods of the land found expression in your dogma, but what happens now? So what do you want to call your creation of the Church of Forgotten Lands?
My church is called the Shining Path.
Fine, fine. Then
They are a monotheistic, sun-worshiping religion. And the way I interpret that paragraph is that we originated here in our land, whatever we ended up calling our land, and we were forced out over time by the natives, or I guess maybe we were the other religions forced us out, and our religion continued outside of the land. And then I think when the empire came back and sort of conquered the land, I think we came back, and we've been like a sort of like the early in the Roman Empire, the early Roman Empire, the Christianity, where it was a cult. It was very spread out, but it was sort of under the surface, right? And sort of what's the word I want? The early Rome didn't like the church, so they persecuted them. Yeah, we were persecuted by the empire. And then when the empire, during the rebellion, as the empire lost its strength, our church sort of burst out into the open, became, openly confronting the empire, and has sort of consolidated their position now here in their ancestral homeland. So that's the short version of what I'm imagining.
I know I'm very impressed with backstory. We will come into filling in some of the details of that in mechanical and game narrative terms in a bit, but for now, simply add that to as your house name,
Okay.
and I'll come back to you in a minute once I've been around everybody else, and we'll go round and round and round repeatedly, folks, just so you know. So Dan, you are the forgers of the Marble City, and what are you calling yourself? Because the forgers are tempered and strong, a steel heart gilded in the finest filigree. You craft beautiful trinkets, impossible monuments, and storied weapons.
Yes, and I don't have nearly as much backstory thought as Jason does, but I've got a name, and that is Sparking Chisel and Blazing Mallet.
Yeah, just to reassure everyone, don't feel obliged to have done as much thinking about this as Jason has. I'll settle for a name. Okay, Joe, what about the Horselords of the Steppe? What do you want to call your incarnation of the Horselords of the Steppe?
So I've taken advantage of my channeling my Slavic Czech heritage, and so we will the house will be called Jezdec, which is Jezdec, which is
don't tell me how to spell it. Write it in.
House Jezdec.
Jezdec. And how do people refer to you? Do they refer you to as the Jezdec, or House Jezdec?
Probably the Jezdec, because we're
Fine.
probably going to be the most loosely organized in terms of house, I would imagine.
Well, we'll explore that one. Fine. And then Alex, the family. Have you got? I mean, the newfound family. Even as the rebellion began, refugees flooded into this land in search of a better life. You are the community those refugees have formed, holding on to the memories of your past while fighting for your own seat at the table. Do you have a name in mind for your house?
Let's can I pick something now that we maybe adjust slightly?
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. As we go round iteratively, stuff will firm up in everyone's minds, I'm sure.
Yeah, let's call them the Cursed.
Ooh,
that sounds like it could use some interesting backstory.
Indeed so. Okay, so then background to the Shining Path. I will try to start using your in-game names rather than referring to the kind of overarching one. We begin then with you adding something to the map, Jason. And if you drop down, and this applies to everyone, if you drop down to row 29, folks, you'll find landmarks of the ancient past. And so there's usually an option of a choice of 3. So, Jason, which one are you opting for?
Okay. So I create a border.
Add,
So-
yeah, add the border of your parent country to the map.
Right.
Now,
So I'm gonna put it, I'm gonna make a line down here to mark the border. Just get this sorted.
and folks, let me stress, if you're unfamiliar with Google Drawings, just ask and I will demonstrate how stuff works.
Yeah, I'll need a little bit of, I'll just, it's gonna be messy and ugly right now, but I'm adding the
Yeah.
line down in the corner. That's gonna be the land that we were forced into. It's like a, I'm gonna call it the dry lands is beyond there, and it's sort of a deserty scrub land. And then it says, let's see. I am going to add a ancient temple.
I'd suggest using the point of interest symbol for
Yeah.
that.
I'm gonna
and
make
just-
it, I'm gonna make it a ruin, I think.
Oh, right.
I think
Yeah,
right
yeah,
now
yeah.
it's gonna start as a ruin. I'm gonna put that way out here. And I'm gonna call that, the Temple of the Prophet. Maybe that's the legendary origin place of our religion.
Yeah, so if you want to copy and paste one of those, well, I was going to say just copy and paste a point of interest up there and edit, but by all means.
Boom. Does that work?
Yeah, that's fine. So that's our first landmark. Let me then go to Dan. What does it say for the forgers in terms of a landmark of the ancient past?
I need to draw a mountain range. And then I've selected an old crater where once a mysterious metal was unearthed. So I think I will put the mountain range in the southern parts here. I'm gonna draw it because that's what I like to do. And these are mountains. And I will add a point of interest. For the crater, which I think was sort of tucked in the mountains here.
Fine. Brilliant. Thank you. Mysterious metal. Yeah, brilliant. Let's go to Joe. Joe, the Horselords. What do you have to add to the map from the ancient past?
So we will be adding where the step is.
Fine.
And
Now I've got
then,
two suggestions for that in terms of tools to use.
all right.
You could either go for shapes and just, draw an area.
Right.
Or if you're looking for something a little bit more, different, then the curve will join up.
Okay. So I have a question for
Go ahead.
Jay. I was thinking of putting the step up in the upper right, kind of that area, and then down through to the mountains. Would you be opposed if the Temple of the Prophet was kind of on the edge of that, or in it, or would there be any thoughts of that?
The choice is entirely yours. You get to place the step. These locations can interact in ways unexpected by the person who puts them there.
All right, the power. I'll just try to do this. I don't know if I'm this is strange. Is it going to?
Aha, there you go.
Overfilled things, but there we go. And I do not know what that little line I accidentally put in there is, so sorry about that.
Fear not. As I say, part of my job as the GM between sessions is to just tart up the map.
And then my other thing
Yeah.
is, given given the suggestion of some low supernatural, I now feel compelled to add the field of bones where the dead will not stay buried long.
Fine. Where do you want to put that? And again, a point of interest might be the simple way to label it.
Okay, so. And we're not compelled to put these inside our like region. You just throw them anywhere on the map,
Exactly
right?
so. Any way you like.
So, oh god damn it. Sorry. I'm Google mapping it up over here. Now, here we go. I'm going to put it there. And I will label it here momentarily.
That's okay. Now I am noticing a blue line running across the middle of the map. Is that someone's deliberate, or is that an accidental?
I saw that there, but I don't.
Oh, and
look-
I'm happy to say it's me. Right.
Oh, okay.
What
Looks
a
like you're
relief.
starting to do something when you
It
haven't
is.
finished it.
Yeah. There we go. And now I
Yeah,
can
that's
delete
not
it.
on my screen.
No, there we go. There you go. Okay. Let's move along to Alex then, if we've got the field of bones in. And the family, it says, draw 2 borders with neighboring countries on the map.
Yeah, that, and then the next sentence seems to contradict that, so I'm a little confused.
Okay, draw 2 borders for neighboring countries on the map, and then the drop down will tell you what else you're adding.
Oh, sorry, I'm reading off the PDF, my mistake.
Oh, okay, right. I'm hoping the two are reasonably congruent, but
Well, since we have a deserty area already, I won't pick the desert. So I'll do the time-worn monolith, marking a forgotten war.
fine. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it could do with a kind of line break. Draw 2 borders with neighboring countries on the map. Full stop.
Okay, well,
Then pick one of the things below to add. Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, we have. It seems like we already have 3 borders on the map already, but they're not necessarily other countries.
We've only got 1 border so far. That's down bottom left to the drylands.
No, I mean, but the mountains make a, geologically speaking.
Oh,
like
I
a
see.
natural
Okay,
border.
I think in terms of border here, we're talking about national or neighbor state borders.
Mhm. So then we'll say the other side of the, it's right. We'll say the other side of the mountains is a border,
Okay.
and then I'll change the color of that so it doesn't look like a river. And then I'm just thinking about what if we had an internal border?
So you surround another state.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing to say you can't. I think you want to be careful about using up the blank space in the middle, in the sense that you're going to be left with less of the land. So I suppose my advice would be to go for edge borders, because this land map will end up sitting in a bigger map if we get beyond those borders to explore those countries.
Okay, well, then I'll just do the normal thing of making another border over here. And then the landmark, the monolith, we'll call it a point of interest then, yes?
Yeah, I think that's the simplest way.
I'll come up with a better name for it, but we'll just call it that for now.
No sweat. So let me ask some questions about those landmarks then. Starting with the Temple of the Prophet, this ancient temple. This is where you believe the Shining Path originates. Am I right?
Yep.
And is it still important, therefore, to the church?
Very much so. That's sort of our ultimate goal, is to sort of reclaim that and bring it back to the glory of ancient times.
Oh, fine. That's okay. And then in terms of the Field of Bones, I'm working my way down the sheet here, but down the map. Field of Bones, Joe, where there are unquiet dead.
I was thinking maybe an ancient battlefield, maybe related to when the Empire took over these lands. Maybe that was where the final conquest of these lands occurred.
Typically, the ancient stuff predates Empire, because
Okay.
you're about to work forward in time through the Imperial occupation. But this could be just before the Empire, I guess. So yeah, ancient battlefield.
Yeah, so I used that where I used ancient very loosely there. So
Well, the Empire could have been in control of this land for a long time.
That's very true. That's very true. It's very true. Then Alex, the monolith. A time-worn monolith marking a forgotten war. Do you want to tell us anything more about the monolith? Or do you want to leave it as a blank sheet for now?
I think I'm going to right now leave it a bit blank. I'm going to see what other stuff everyone else creates as we go along, and maybe see if we can find something to fit in there that would make sense for something that somebody else comes up with. Not to cop out, have a cop out, but just some maybe so that we can fit it in organically somewhere.
Fine, because I'll be honest with you, I'm wondering whether that ancient battlefield of the Field of Bones is a battlefield related to a forgotten war. Just put that one out there as a thought. The Forgers, Dan. Now the mountains are called the Reach, and this crater with mysterious metal. Is that mysterious metal that the Forgers are familiar with, or is it a legendary storied metal that you seek?
In my imagination, towards the end of the Empire's rule, there was some streak in the sky. And for the Forgers anyway, that was a harbinger, I guess, of the end of the Empire. A couple of the Forgers, some members of the family, were in the mountains to do their mining, and that's where the comet landed, I guess. and they discovered this metal. And I think a lot of anything that any ritualistic stuff they do is sort of the source is this mysterious metal. So in my imagination anyway, the forgers are the only ones who are aware of this metal.
So people may know that there's a crater up there in the mountains, but its value is at the minute unknown to them.
And it's kind of far away, right? It's kind of difficult to access, and the forgers have sort of a special, because they're mining metals or mining stuff from the mountains, they already have a means for getting them.
Well, I may well be asking you at some point, folks, to locate the kind, if you will, the hub of your house, your faction, and it might make sense for it to be near that crater. I don't know, but we'll worry about that a bit. So in the ancient past, we have a comet. Fine. Let's go back round then to the church, I think is where I've been starting. You now need to select a stat combination, Jason. And I've put the stat options. If you hover over the stat line under the Shining Path, you should see that there are the options for that stat line are outlined.
I think I'll take the first one. Reach 1, grasp 0, slight 1.
Okay.
If your faith is the ancestor faith of the land, adapted to exist under the empire's rule. That sounds about what I'm thinking.
It does. Fine. Then let's go to the forgers. Again, your stat lines along with a kind of rationale is there, Dan. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I chose reach 2, grasp 0, slight -1. They are essentially an honest people, and they hoped to earn favor with the empire and with those in power by demonstrating their skills.
And I mean, the implication there is that you are that maybe courts far and wide know of your skills.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Let's go to the Horselords. Which of those options appeal to you, Joe, for the Horselords, the Jezdec?
I believe I'm torn between the first and the last one, but I think I'm gonna stick with reach 0, grasp 2, slight -1s. If your ancestors fiercely defended their pasture from invaders or competing herds. I like the idea of them being warlike, but I'm not sure I want the one where my ancestors were a locust swarm seizing pasture after pasture. But so this one, the first one feels like I can get that little bit of we're fierce horse lords, but we're not monsters.
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah,
So
fine.
That's one. Reach 0.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Fine, thank you. And finally, Alex, what about the family, the cursed?
I'm deciding between the first two, the first is if you come from countless different nations displaced by new world deprivations, or a single nation that the empire utterly obliterated.
Oh my, yeah.
The second seems more immediately thematic, but the first one could be interesting in terms of, having being able to have lots of different types of people to draw on. Yeah, I think I'll go with that. Just to pick something. So reach 1, grasp 0, slight 0.
Fine. Okay. So that's our starting point in terms of the kind of modus operandi of these folks. Okay, now we come to your customs, which you will find just above stats. I'm sure there was a logic in how I laid this page out. Now it escapes me. So let me go back round to the Shining Path. The Shining Path. Now, you've got a range of possibilities here. In terms of your rule, what can you tell me about your rule?
I believe for rule, the shining one is the church's divinely anointed ruler.
So you have a a pontiff come
Yeah.
top shining.
Yeah, I like that term, so we'll use that shining one. That fits well for what I'm thinking. So
Okay.
the shining one is our our divinely anointed ruler.
Fine.
And let's see, populace. I think I like fully half the population live in monasteries, mastering crafts as well as prayer. So it's very heavy in the percentage of the population that are actively involved in the church.
And let me just stress, folks. I've put these drop downs lifted from the rules. By all means, use the note spaces near the bottom of the sheet if you want to kind of add a bit of detail, or whether the words they kind of give the theme of it, but you want to change the detail.
Sure.
And then what about culture?
Culture. No expenses spared. Decorating churches and art patronage is a religious duty. So I think the actual followers are pretty austere, and they probably live very simple lives, but I think our people put all their wealth into their churches, into their religious artifacts, and they're wondrous and beautiful. But like I said, the people actually live very simple lives.
I wonder, for instance, where they might find the craftspeople to do such things.
I wonder.
It's beyond me. Okay, let's go to the forgers next. What about your customs? How are you ruled? What does the populace kind of look like? And is there a cultural touchstone here to work through?
Yeah, I didn't love any of these choices, but I think I'm starting to form a picture of these folks. Even though they're all sort of known as the forgers, they're not a single ethnic group. They're actually multiple ethnic groups kind of within it. I didn't like the idea of this just being a homogenous group of people who build. That seemed weird. So this is a kind of a culture and a family that drawn together from the craft, almost like a guild, and they're ruled by various clans, and two of them have kind of elevated and are kind of vying for power. And I'm wondering if one of the clans is Sparking Chisel and the other is Blazing Mallet, and then just together the family is known as Sparking Chisel and Blazing Mallet. And maybe some of these other clans reference some of the other tools that are used. So I'm going to need to research various metalwork tools. The populace, it says those who show talent are elevated from toil in the fields. I think I'm using fields very generally, so it might be that some of them are miners and are sent to do kind of that kind of manual labor, or they work in smelting places, things like that. And only a few of them are kind of elevated to craftsfolk who are or architects or engineers, that kind of thing.
And again, something else I think it's worth pointing out is that while these characteristics define your house broadly, that doesn't mean you don't have farmers. It
Right.
doesn't mean that you don't have warriors protecting the churches. Because when we get into character creation, we'll discover that there are a variety of different kinds of people within each of these houses. And then what was culture? I noticed the misprint on sculpture, which I've now corrected. So you should be able to find sculpture in there.
There you go. Sculpture was perfected by the forgers, and their statues and carvings are everywhere. I think they've always been able to do this, but once they found this alloy in the crater, their statues really and kind of carvings just became kind of amazing. So I think.
Do you think that's to do with the nature of this metal and what it allows you to carve, or is there literally some power in the metal?
I have a couple ideas for what that could be. It could be that they were able to make better tools from the metal. It could be that, yes, they were able to just make better casts or things like that. I'm also wondering if it allowed them to lightly animate some of these sculptures, so that there's sort of a touch of ritual in them too.
How delightful. Okay, and finally, where are we in terms of the family's customs?
Well, I was wondering if, because I'm playing them as a diverse homogeneous group of peoples, if in order to give them a little bit of cohesion, if we could have everybody else just look down on them immensely, that I think that would work very well, because otherwise, why would they work together to form their own clan? So, I mean, it doesn't have to be like intense racial hatred or animosity or anything like that. It could just be an, xenophobia.
Or just a bit of classism in that sense
Yeah.
of we have all these things and you're just this kind of, just you're cursed. Hell.
I've also thought of that it might be interesting if their thinking is also slightly different from everybody else's, in the sense that maybe because of their position, they have okay, so my first one, my rule is that they elect voices of the people. So to have a kind of democratic
I like that. Yeah.
Idea behind them where they've decided that this is the right thing to do. And, as long as everybody else hates them, they might as well all work together. And they found that this is the best way for them to work together. So I'll have that. And then in the populous section, I have, if I first thought about waging battles with each other over slights from the old country, but I feel like I could just have I would just turn into my own story all by itself, unrelated to everybody else. So that I think is less useful, because then I could just have my own game by myself. So I'll pick working together to win the prestige you deserve. And then for culture, I'll pick we must work to keep our home in our hearts, for we shall return one day.
Fine. It's I think we've created the communards of the French Revolution, who are electing people to speak for them and working together to improve your place in the world. Brilliant. Okay. Now I am struck by the fact that Joe.
Sorry, I don't think I've done mine.
You haven't. I thought I had a couple more minutes before I was going to call a break. So go ahead, Joe. What about your rule?
I'll be quick. So we are Council of Clans is the rule, which feels very appropriate for this type of folk. And the populace is, I think I'm going to land on the clans are spread across the whole steppe to seek their means of life. And then their culture is boisterous and warlike, but always welcoming in peacetime.
Oh, so they won't like you when you're angry.
Yeah, I like that idea of like super loyal to their friends, but quick to anger, and if you betray them, look out, right? Sort of thing.
Yeah, because there's a +2 on grasp there, which is all about claim by force when things get a bit iffy. Okay. Right, thank you, and thanks for the reminder. It is just coming up to the hour now. I'm going to suggest that we take a break from now until, is 5 past long enough? Yeah, okay, I'll see you back at 5 past. Okay, so we're back from our break, and we have something beginning to sketch in terms of the ancient past. Before we get into the details of the imperial occupation, we need to create our arbiter, and the arbiter is the group that were at the heart of the rebellion that all of you were part of. You all contributed to that rebellion to free the land from the empire. But the arbiter is that group that was central to that rebellion and maintains a position of leadership, for want of a better word, in the land. And you'll find there is an arbiter tab to the right-hand side of your house tabs. And while in the book there are 3 types of arbiter, I've ruled one of them out of bounds because it was a little bit too esoteric for me. And so you will find that there is either legendary warriors up there in the top left, or the guardians of history. And if you switch between those, you will see that the guardians of history, their overarching kind of shtick is show the costs demanded by stasis. My dark side, their dark side. I prefer not to think of this as an individual, but we may come to that. My dark side is my nationalism and reactionary outlook. I am firmly convinced that the old ways were best and that every change wrought by the empire must be walked back. When that position collides with the messy reality of the modern nation, with citizens of the land who may be first or second generation immigrants or who derive comfort from foreign rituals and practice, I am unlikely to demonstrate nuance or flexibility. Suffering will follow. And the other option is the legendary warriors. Be the tyrant I tested myself against is their overarching shtick. I am defined by my strength. Through my force of arms and strategic brilliance, the war was won. I was beloved and honored with the highest office in the land, but the skills that excel in war are not the ones required for peace. When crisis strikes, I'll deal with it like a military threat, identify an enemy, rally the troops to fight it, and crush all opposition. It's kind of like a really aggressive George Washington after who else is going to be president? Oh, George. Let me go round the table and see if you have preferences for which of those kind of origins for the arbiter. So, Alex, I've not come to you first yet, so let me come to you first. Which of those 2 appeals or doesn't appeal least?
I think that from my own selfish perspective, it would be the most interesting to be that the arbiter takes on the form of the guardians of history, only because my my faction has the most chance of suffering from that, and therefore, from suffering comes strength.
Yes, absolutely. Don't you just love the gauntlet? Oh yeah, beat me with your guardians of history. I'm seeing some nods. Anyone want to speak strongly in favor of the legendary warriors? Okay, I'll time out on that one then. So guardians of history it is. Now we have to agree.
Let me add one thing. Alan, do you have a preference? Because I mean, this seems like your baby. Like, do you care which one you play? Like, I would say
not at all. Absolutely not. All I know is which project you're going to kick off with from the arbiter. But beyond that, okay. I have no view. And then the other thing you need to agree between us is the form that it takes. And you see there are 3 options here: monolithic, oligarchic, and populist. So I went to Alex first for that one. Joe, let me go first to you on this one. Is there one of those that appeals? Now, you'll notice it's broken down into a chunk of text, which is kind of descriptive and narrative. And then there's a second paragraph, which gives you some sense of how this might be kind of operationalized in play.
Sorry, I'm reading.
No, that's why.
Like I read the first one, I'm like, ooh, I kind of like that, and then I started to read the second one, and I said, ooh, I kind of like that, and so give me a second here. It's, and
of course, the rest of you are reading this just without the pressure that Joe's under.
So these all seem to have kind of like there seems to be almost like a supernatural mystical element to all of them if I'm reading these. I
think that's fair. I think the guardians of history are the more mystical of the 2 choices.
I will vote for oligarchic. I like this tree thing a little bit. So I think there's some interesting things that could come from that. I like monolithic too. I like that one as well. So those, please others pipe up and throw your voice into this as well.
Jason, do you have a view?
Yeah, I like oligarchic. I like the idea. I'm getting the feel of the original. This works for my house, that there's sort of a theocratic organization, the Guardians, and that they're the original religion, or the more folk religion, where mine is the sort of newfangled religion. So I lean towards oligarchic also.
Dan, what about you?
I think any of these are compatible. I like oligarchic. I like this Guardians of History just in general, because I think to a greater or lesser extent, all of us are pushing forward in a new way, and the Guardians are drawing us back. So this makes me want the Forgers to lean more into metallic work, whereas it seems like these oligarchic Guardians are more into sort of nature and wood and things like that. So it feels like a nice contrast.
It looks like we're leaning towards oligarchic. Alex, any observation?
That's fine with me, but I have yet to read anything that pertains to oligarchy, so I'm not sure exactly what they get their name from.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you that they use the same terms. It's more obvious in the case of the military ones.
I see.
Yeah, so they just, in the rules, they just happen to use the same three terms. I suppose that it's not like there's a single thing, but there's more than one thing. But I take your point. So I'm going to put a tick in the oligarchic box unless anyone violently objects. Okay, there we go.
Do you have a preference, Alan?
Oh, no, again, part of the excitement of this that I'm beginning to find is overwhelming my nervousness about this great beast of a game, is the fact that through conversation, we're kind of defining this really interesting place. Brilliant. Okay, so we have that. Let us now move back to landmarks, my friends, because now we know who led the rebellion. We know how that is exhibited today. We now have to work out, well, what was the empire like? So let's go back, and I think if I share the map again, I am conscious that I shared the map quite a lot previously when I probably didn't need to, but there we go. Such is the nature. Okay. Okay, let's stick with that order for this bit and start with Alex. Alex, the cursed. If you go down there to row 30, imperial occupation. There's several options down there for something to add, landmark to add that relates to the occupation by the empire. Any of those grab you?
Probably the Ashen Ward.
Okay. Now
So where was
this
in the character keeper? Sorry.
Oh, sorry, you're down on row 30.
Oh, thank you.
And the nice thing about the Ashen Ward is you get to place a city, because it says it's a city's thriving international quarter, blah, blah, blah. So where do you want to put a city that has an Ashen Ward? And again, don't worry about naming it for now. I know it's a city, but you might want to just put a note next to it as it's the site of the Ashen Ward. and that's all I need for tarting this up between now and next time. Let's go next to the Horselords, the Jezdec. Am I pronouncing that right?
As right as any of us are. So
Okay.
close enough.
Okay. So again, down on row 30, Imperial occupation.
I've been thinking about a couple different things. So, and I have I had an idea of one that's not on here, but I don't want.
Well, go on, run it by me.
Well, so I kind of thought about maybe that there was a that one of the things the Empire did was much like the American West, they slaughtered and killed much of the animals that the nomadic peoples lived off of, right? And that maybe there's whether it's like a slaughterhouse or the place where they did that is still there.
Fine. I mean, by all means, just type that in if that appeals to you. It's certainly a sufficiently unpleasant idea.
There's a veil thing. I thought there was something around harm to animals, so I don't want to step on anything there if that gets too close.
Fair point. Let's just check in. Is an imperial slaughterhouse tricky for anybody? If so, just say something in the chat and we'll.
Because I've got other ideas that we could use too, so it's no big deal if it is to me.
Okay, there's nothing in the chat yet, so go with this imperial slaughterhouse. Right, and again, I think probably, I mean, is this in a town, or is it a point of interest isolated from more normal habitations?
I was going to put a point of interest, or maybe it is a town, but I was going to put it right along the edge of the steppe there where they.
Fine. Yes, I have pictures of them herding. Maybe your horses, I don't know, off the land to this kind of processing center. Is it Chicago that has a big butchery? Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. Okay. There she blows. And again, if you put just a bit of text next to that says, site of the Imperial Slaughterhouse, that'll be enough of a placeholder for now. Okay, now my order's falling apart, but let me go next to Dan and ask you about the Imperial occupation.
Yes, those jerks made us work in a quarry. And not to get too one-note wonder here, but I'm going to put that kind of at the foot of the mountains. Oh, I used the wrong thing. So the quarry will be kind of down here, maybe near the city.
Okay. Fine. And where the state slaves were put to work. Now we don't have any lines, veils, or anything else on slavery, folks. So stop me if this would be a good time to put one in there. But I am curious whether they enslaved members of your house or whether you were the overseers of others.
I suspect it was probably a bit of both. Yeah.
So you're running your own work camp on behalf of the Empire.
Right.
Gee.
Which is perhaps what caused some of the fragmentation among the noble houses.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. Okay. And that leaves me, I think, with the Shining Path.
Okay. Let's see, landmark. I think I'm going to add an ancient monastery toppled by the Empire. And I will put it somewhere in the middle here. Let's call this a other fortification.
By all means.
Put it about here. And Alex, I was going back and looking at your monolith. I don't know if you've come up with an idea yet, but I was thinking, given where you put it and kind of what our story is so far, I wonder if in the midst of time when the shining path was forced from this land, I wonder if the what do we call our arbiter?
We haven't given them a name, actually. So if we want to...
I was thinking, how do people feel about like the druids? They seem like druidy kind of thing to me. What do people think of that for the arbiter?
My nervousness about that is only that because the idea of the D&D druid is so embedded in our game culture that it might be either a little bit stereotypical or limiting.
Okay. Let's see.
I mean, I've got an option.
Sure.
What about keepers of the tree?
Yeah. That makes
Because
sense.
the tree is this interesting link to nature. Let me put that in for now.
Okay.
My idea was to
Go
call them the wise ones, because
Happy with
that gives them a sense of that they are revered, and yet there can be lots of, now they're very conflicted, but seen by most to be extremely have a conflicted heritage.
I'm very happy with that. We can tinker with that after people have had a chance to mull it over, but I'll use the wise ones as a placeholder for now. So Jason, sorry, that came out of a question you had for Alex, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking the wise ones, maybe when maybe it was pretty calamitous, and when in the ancient times when the shining path was forced from this land, maybe they erected that monolith, sort of like, don't cross this line or else kind of thing. So maybe it's I don't know, is a monolith like what do you imagine a monolith looks like, Alex? Or what do you, if you like that idea, what do you think it would look like? Or I don't know if you have another idea.
Well, monolith just means one stone in Greek, right? So
in my mind, it's a standing stone of some description.
Yeah, so yeah. So like I said, do you imagine they put up this standing stone then as sort of like, this is the border, don't come back kind of thing, to my religion?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I'm inclined, because it's Alex's to define, and it is currently a monolith related to a forgotten war.
Okay.
So I for my purposes, I put that on the shelf until you've got a little bit more chance to work out relationships between you.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's everyone. No, Alex, have I not done you? Oh yes, the Ashen.
you
Yeah,
started with me.
I did. Well, let me try and keep that order in my head then. So let me go. Let me go next to the GM guides players through the history. Whoops, daisy. Establishes the relationship between them and their initial influence. So all the way down the bottom, again, don't ask me why I put it down there, row 96-ish. There are a set of questions here that could lead to stat changes and relationship stuff. Now, what you should see is a question and some rule detail and a space underneath. There's an empty space to type your kind of responses in. So let me start with the family and ask you, how did the Empire treat your house? If you were reviled or scapegoated, get +1 favor. If they evicted others to give you somewhere to live, get -1 favor, -1, but pick an extra surplus in the resources section.
Well, I think what could make them more hated by everybody else, if they were elevated by the Empire. So obviously I have to pick that one.
Fine. If you just type something to that effect in row 99, in cell 99, and then you will find that there is a favor stat up there on row 13, 14. So adjust your favor in those terms. And remind me, or make a note to yourself, that when we come onto resources, there's a chance that your surplus may be tweaked. Let me then ask the forgers next. What about your experience of the Empire? How did the Empire treat your state? Well, I mean, your people.
Yeah, this is hard because I was imagining us both toiling in the mines and construction sites, and that our craft work was prestigious and desirable, but I don't think I can say both. So I think I'm going to lean towards our craft work was prestigious and desirable. So that gives us a favor -1 and an extra surplus.
Fine. In fact, I'm just thinking maybe we should do those surpluses and needs now, just so I don't lose track of them. Let me go back to the family, Alex. Forgive the kind of jumping about. Up there on 32, there's resources, yeah? And in the little note, you will see that, whoops, daisy, don't know why I did that. There we go. Pick 2 as surpluses. You're going to pick 3 because of that bit of history. So the options you have is leadership, morale, recruits, justice, and coin. You are picking 3 of those as surpluses.
Sorry, is this a drop down or is this?
Sorry, no, this is the note is attached to the row 32 resources, where you'll find the detail, and then you just type them into those either surplus or need column. So
I had thought of the thing that the Empire gave them was that they were used as kind of mid-level overseers by the Empire, because they were a group that could be easily controlled and did not have their own power base really at the time. So that's why they're hated so much. But along the lines of, and what have the Romans ever done for us, I would say that the system that established is nevertheless extremely useful. And so they are still used in that, they still are given that position, or they still hold that position for whatever reason, among the different houses.
It's a skill set that everybody needs. They might hate having to come to you for it. So is that leadership?
Yeah, I'd say that was leadership.
Okay. And then which other 2 do you want to take as surpluses? And folks, just for reference, there is a resource reference which gives you some indications of how I might view a surplus or a need. One of the issues with the original Legacy game is that some of these are very tricky to interpret. And happily, Free from the Yoke comes with some solid examples.
And what page would that be on in the book?
Oh Lord, I've no idea, Alex. I'm afraid it's resource ref tab.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I, as much as possible, anything you need will be in the keeper somewhere, or anything I thought you might need. Time will tell. And there is the leadership one mentions, a smooth and efficient bureaucracy as a surplus.
Yeah, I think I like that.
Which of the other 2 are you thinking you might want to take as surpluses?
Oh, I thought it said to take 2 surpluses.
You get an extra one because of those.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's why I've come back to you, because I knew I was going to forget about that extra one.
Let's do morale as a surplus. That makes sense. And recruits as a surplus.
So you've got a decent sized population, despite the fact that they're looked down on, perhaps because they're looked down on by everybody else. There's a sense of cohesion around that morale. Brilliant. So just put those three in kind of cell 34, 35, 36, and then the other two go in the top two needs. Don't worry about location yet. I'll come back to that. Okay. Fine. Let me go back to the forges where we were talking about craftwork prestigious and desirable. Start with favor -1, but pick an extra surplus. And your range of options, what have you chosen?
Well, don't love the options, but so I've chosen marble and land from that initial list. And then I'd hoped maybe to add something like machines or engineers as my third surplus.
I'll be honest with you, engineers will come up as the possibility of taking followers, I think.
Okay.
So I'd like you to stick to the options in the book at this point, because you may then want to go looking for or find a way to make machines.
Right. All right.
So which of those do you think might be helpful in doing that? The other use of surpluses is the arbiter is going to ask you for surpluses to build his current or their current project. So one way to get on the good side of the arbiter is to have the kind of surpluses that they might want.
All right. So
and then crops and pigments for those fabulous mosaics and painted statues that the church wants, conceivably. Okay.
Yeah, we like the purity of the stone, and everyone else wants us to paint it, and we just never got around to doing it. So
love it, love it. Let me come next to the Jezdec. Let's go down to your history. How did the Empire treat your house? If you were raiders or fugitives, start with +1 favor. If you profited under their rule, start with -1, but pick 3 surpluses in the resources section.
I'm going to choose the raiders or fugitives.
Okay, then you get +1 favor because you were rebelling before there was a rebellion. And that means you're just going to pick 2 surpluses, I think.
Okay. And favor is somewhere.
Favor is up there under stats.
All right, there we go. So +1 to that.
Yep.
And then surpluses. So I'm gonna take I think I'm gonna take too many choices. It will become I could switch and be a what do you call a collaborator, and then I could get a third one. No, I'm gonna take I want 3. I want herds, land, and scouts, but obviously I can't have all 3. Herds and choices. Scouts.
Fine. And then the other 3 will go in the needs column. And finally, the shining path. Were you heretics or apostates?
Yes.
Or were you fated in imperial culture? I mean, based on your kind of minority
we were
cult.
heretics. Yeah.
Okay, +1 favor, but you are limited to the usual 2 surplus.
Mm-hmm.
Missionaries, land, crops, literature, or wealth?
I think we're going to start with wealth and missionaries.
Fine. And then the other 3 will crop up in the needs column. And of course, a drive for your houses will be to reduce your needs, cancel out your needs, and develop other surpluses. That is partly the house level game, really. Okay, let's go to the next bit of history and go back round to the cursed. How is this land different from your homeland? Say one way its climate, culture, or wildlife were strange to you, and say how you adapted, Alex.
Has anybody had a strong feeling or concept already about the climate that we currently inhabit?
I mean, at the minute, we know we've got some steppe lands. I am almost certainly going to draw in some rivers, just because it gives me some options. I imagine that this is a relatively fertile location, because we know that crops are a possibility.
I'm picturing the fantasy, Slav lands that is sort of the default of the scenario. That's what I'm picturing so far.
Yeah.
And those borders very likely would be rivers, I imagine. That seems to be pretty much the historical tendency, for borders.
So I
If you
think
need a bit more time to mull, I'm happy to come back to you. Don't feel
I
the pressure.
think with the default idea of outsiders coming from the South in our own world, or our own cultural perspective, why don't we say that they come from the North? They come from, or maybe they're a mix, but they're a mix of peoples, but a large majority of them come from the North, which are yeah, I think that would make sense.
Okay, well,
So
if you
from
wanna...
a very inhospitable land that the others have, that they have learned to live in and thrive in, but that other people have trouble with.
So is it simply that this place is so rich in food and wildlife compared to those barren northern wastes?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Great, fine.
It's like there's always the you people don't know how good you have it here kind of.
Love it, love it. Say how you adapted. I mean, is there a sense in which you retain a kind of frugality and you haven't adapted? Or have you embraced the largesse? Or something else? God.
I think it would be interesting to have there be a split where the elders of the group tend to, so that the elders of the group want to kind of keep to the old ways, and then the younger ones wanting to kind of assimilate more to the dominant culture. And yet a lot of the reason why they had their position within the empire was because of their ability to work together, because in the northern climes, they had to work together or they would all die. So
put something as a almost an aid memoir to some of those things into that slot. And let me go.
and where is that? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, down at the bottom of the character keeper, down there on row 100. Just for reference, folks, probably the largest character keeper I've ever come up with. Let's go next to the forges. What about the next bit of your history? Which house did you send artisans to after a war to rebuild? They say what they put back together for you, and you have influence on them.
I feel like we've been sort of dancing around this, so maybe we should sort of directly say that we helped the Shining Path rebuild some of their stuff. Jason, is that cool with you? What did we help you put back together?
We haven't established it yet, but probably maybe whatever the center of my religion is, whatever the city or location is, you know. I'm picturing most of my sites are pretty ruined over the centuries. So maybe recently you've allowed, you know, helped me to put back together whatever our capital is, you know.
And by all means, feel you can put a town or associate your, you know, where does the Shining One? Where is the Shining One's seat? Feel free to add a town or add it to our existing city.
All right.
Does that help you, Dan?
Yeah, that's great. And in the character keeper on line 66, I added the Shining Path, and it seems like I've got influence on that, +1 influence on them.
You do indeed. You do indeed. Let's go next to the Horselords. The Horselords, the second bit of your history. Which house did you feud with before the Empire came?
Here's my idea, and we'll have to see if it works with there. So Jason, I was thinking that perhaps it was the Shining Path, because perhaps there is land feuds around where, because that temple is pretty close to the steppe and things like that. And perhaps maybe if it is a prophet or a messianic or a missionary type religion, maybe we didn't take kindly to you attempting to subvert our youth. So
yep, I love it.
If that works. So.
Sure.
So does this suggest that you continued raiding the Shining Path in the midst of the revolution?
Yeah.
In which case they get influence on you. So Jason, if you want to add the Jezdec to your influence section up there on row 30 odd.
Okay.
Sorry, 60 odd.
Got it.
And then let me come to the Shining Path, I think is what's left.
Oh, sure.
Which far off country brought the church to these lands? Say what customs you still keep from that place. I suppose this is the dry land customs, is it?
Exactly. So I think we've come from the dry lands, and I think we continue to wear the by the way, my historical analog for my people is Arabs. So I think we still wear the Arabic robes and whatnot, the black and white robes from the dry lands, even though they might not really be appropriate for the climate of this land.
Yeah, you need to layer up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then let's go back around. I think, Alex, I think my order is failing everywhere else, but I think I started this lot with you. So let me keep going with which house was close to you before the Empire's invasion? They say how they helped you find your feet in your new home. You get influence on one another.
There would be a couple. I mean, I could see it working with a couple of the other houses. I could see Horselords working because they're natural outsiders kind of already. I could see Forgers working as well, though, because people who create stuff always have a need for, you know, greater organization and things like that. So they could have worked together with them well. Like,
which one do you want to plump for?
I'm actually gonna Now that I've said that, I think I'm going to go. The Shining Path picked what?
Picked what for what? Sorry, you lost me.
Sorry, somebody went first in this, right?
Oh, you're the first.
No, I think I started with you.
Oh, you started with me. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
so we go round for each bit of the history.
So I have a question for the Shining Path. So I forget exactly what we said that this was a new religion that was brought in with the empire, correct?
Well, the complicated answer is that originally originated here, it was forced out, it grew in the empire sort of as heretics, and then it was brought back as a cult by when the empire came back and conquered this land. Does that make sense?
Like a tick attached to
Mhm.
the rump
So
of the
now,
empire.
now it's back and it's looking to get fat, so to speak.
So they were in opposition to the empire.
No, I mean, I use the analog of the Christian church in Rome. You know, it sort of was there. It was, you know, part of the culture, but it was sort of prescribed and kept down, you know, for a long time. And then it finally, you know, burst into become the religion of the empire itself. You know, that's sort of the analog I'm working from.
I see. Okay, I could see then that the peoples of the family attaching themselves to the Shining Path and kind of mass converting when they came here in order to find somebody to have an alliance with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if you take on the true religion, we're all friends.
So specifically then, Jason, you say how you helped the cursed find their feet in their new home.
I'm tempted to say, again, we haven't fully defined how magic and supernatural works, but I think we've gave you, you know, taking on my faith has brought you some supernatural or magical power of some sort. How's that work?
I mean, it's belief that you bring.
Mm-hmm.
How that exhibits, I think, we'll discover. So you strengthen their faith.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that plays back into your morale and your kind of tightness, Alex. I don't know, but you get influence on one another. So add +1 up there on it's in the 60s somewhere, 66, 67. You type in the house concerned. So Alex, you would type in the Shining Path and you would use the drop down to have +1 on them, but also they have +1 on you. Yeah. Okay. Let me go to the Jezdec next. Which land did the Empire send your horsemen to fight in? Say what strange beasts they brought back.
So I kind of imagine that because we were clans, there were, even though we were raiders or fugitives and we never fully were subjugated, that they were conscripted in ways. And so and I like that idea because it's going to feed into the fact that that's why we have a need of soldiers, because lots of them died because they were sent to. So I like the idea of maybe like a jungle-like land of some sort, right? I was thinking maybe they brought back like big cats, right? Like whether it's like panthers, lions, something like that, right? Some sort of you know, and something like that, yeah, that they brought with them.
Thank you for introducing a significant threat to travel. Always welcome. Thank you.
Well,
okay,
invasive species, and who knows?
Indeed. You know, they just expanded to fill the gap. So by all means, add that down there on row 105. Let me go to the Forgers next. The Forgers. Which corner of the Empire were your crafters sent to teach in? What knowledge did you bring back? What was strange about the architecture there?
Admit, I don't have any great ideas. So if anyone has any ideas, I'm open to them. The one thought I'd had, which sort of runs against what I'd been, with the direction I'd been going, is that they were taught how to kind of construct dwellings and buildings integrated into the land a little bit more. And yeah, that's all I got.
Well, so far we've got 3 other countries, or 4 technically. We've got the Drylands, we've got another nation structure to the northwest, assuming this map is oriented traditionally. We know that there are frozen wastes to the north, and we know somewhere off this map there's an area with some jungle in it.
Yeah.
So any of those appeal?
I was thinking to that northwest area where because of the harsher landscape, they took advantage. They had to kind of integrate their building into the landscape as well.
Anyone got a name for that polity to the northwest? Anyone got any suggestions? We got the Drylands to the southwest. Any thoughts?
Did we say the climate was, or have we not established that?
We haven't. We know that kind of off the top of this map somewhere there's this kind of harsh northern exposure. So maybe it's colder.
Mm-hmm.
Alex, I think you probably put that border on. Have you got any idea what you want to call that area?
Yeah, let's call it the Riverlands, and let's make it a area of hundreds of little rivers, with a more decentralized power structure, but just lots of fens and lots of these kind of things, making it tricky to pass through unless you are very familiar with how to navigate the hundreds of different rivers and channels and everything like that have been created.
Fine. I can do something interesting with the map on that. Dan, does that help? Go on.
Yes, I would like to change my answer slightly. Then I believe that those folks probably had a lot of, in order to navigate the land, had to learn how to build lots of different kinds of vehicles. And so what we learned is how to build various kinds of vehicles and how to move over water and over land. So that's kind of the beginning of us building machinery.
Great. I like that. What have I got left? I think I've done everyone but the Shining Pass. Third question. Which house sheltered your people when the Empire persecuted them?
Well, it wasn't the Jezdec. They're horrible. I believe, and it sounds like I've kind of taken that role on for the Cursed. So I think that leaves us with, I forgot the name of Dan's group.
The Sparking Chisel and Blazing Mallet.
Yeah, that's what I think it is.
What did we do to you?
You sheltered
nice
us
to them.
Yeah.
How's
that sound?
Yeah.
Sure.
I just have to note that we have 2 very strong communist images here. One is the hammer and the chisel, of course, being like the hammer and sickle, and the shining path, of course, is the name of the Peruvian communist guerrilla group. So just putting it out there, just the elephant, the communist elephant in the room, so to speak.
Yeah. Facing off against the democratic cursed. So no, fascinating. Okay, let's go back round again. I'm going to keep coming back to you, Alex, as first, just to get me going. Which house did you displace, undercut, or outdo? They say why that activity was important to them and they gain influence on you.
I would say that the position they're in, their organizational position in the empire undercut the dance group because they had maybe been in that position before, or they had, because people who build things naturally have to organize themselves, and they had naturally had that role until the empire foisted the curse upon everyone else.
So Dan, you say why that activity was important. Why was that kind of bureaucratic, almost organizational role that the curse took on? Why was that important to you? And you gain influence on the curse.
Got a lot of influence. This is not good. I think we had seen ourselves. So just so I understand, the cursed displaced and undercut us.
Yes, in a kind of bureaucratic role.
Oh, I see.
Or an organizational role.
I think tell me if this fits. We saw our work as more crafty, and we were leisurely about it. We took our time, and the cursed bringing this bureaucracy created more efficiency, but we felt it undercut our ability to be creative.
I love that, because what we've got here is the transition from early medieval craft guilds into a more kind of bureaucratic, utilitarian, early modern. Oh, brilliant.
Well, plus we don't produce anything, right? So what's our point? According to the crafters, right? We don't, what do we provide?
Also, you don't really understand the work. You don't know what we really do. So all of this bureaucracy and efficiency is you're like management consultants. You don't really understand the outputs that we're creating.
Well, that's how you feel, yeah.
I know it in my heart.
Conveniently forgetting your just-in-time delivery of useful materials. So all that adds up mechanically, once you put a bit of words in, is to the forger, the chisel and mallet gaining influence on the cursed. Yeah. Let me now go to the shining path. Which house has refused to allow your clergy to preach in their holdings? They say why they don't trust you, and you lose any influence you have on each other.
That's got to be the Jezdec.
Yeah, and you currently don't have any influence on one another, I think.
I do have on them, so I lose it, right?
You lose that.
Okay.
Yeah. So Jezdec, tell me, they say why don't you trust the shining path?
I see the Jezdec as having sort of a land-based sort of almost paganish spiritualism, and we don't trust them because they're kind of overriding that with their the monotheistic belief of their gods. So
fine. Does that give you something to write into that space, Jason? Fine.
Yep.
Okay. Let us go next to the sparking chisel and blazing mallet. What ancient site did you disturb to mine beneath? Say whose heritage you accidentally harmed and give them influence on you.
The idea I had, Joe, was that sort of in that space between the steppe and the mountains, we started seeking out some new minerals. And it turns out those are the ancient breeding grounds for the Horselords, and that is a very sacred area for you all. Does that sound?
I love it.
Okay.
Right.
everyone. So
I'm going to add a point of interest here called the breeding grounds.
Or the mine polluted breeding grounds.
Yeah. Yes.
And give them influence on you. So the Jezdec gain influence on the Chisel and Mallet. And then let me go to the Horselords. Which house brought you new stock to strengthen your breeds? Give them influence on you.
I feel like that has to be the family at this point. The only other one that made sense to me was the Shining Path coming from their lands, but we don't like each other so much right now. So I don't know how I could justify. So it feels like it has to be the family with that they were able to bring them new stock.
And I'm curious, given your origins up there in those harsh northern climes, Alex, what do you think you actually brought in terms of breeding stock? What characteristic did you strengthen in the Jezdec herds?
We had our own form of animal husbandry in the north, and because of the conditions, we were able to breed incredible resilience into the creatures that we domesticated, and perhaps as a way of, we didn't intend to breed that into the Horselord stock, but just because that's how we worked, that naturally happened.
Okay, so Joe, does that give you something to put into that slot in the character keeper? Give them influence on you. So the cursed get influence on the Jezdec. And
Sorry,
I think
I'm sorry, what slot am I putting that stuff in?
Oh,
Where
you're down on row 108.
Sorry, I'm lost my mind. I see it now.
I'm sure that's not true. It's easy to get lost in this character keeper, trust me. So it is 3 minutes past. I'm going to suggest we take a break now until, shall we say, 10 minutes past? Is that okay? Fine, I'll see you then. Okay, so back from our final break. This is where we discovered that there is even more to the creation of the shared world in Free from the Yoke than there is in Legacy. Because now, folks, I need to refer you back to the Arbiter tab. Because now we have to work through some steps in the rebellion, the history of the rebellion. And the way this works, can you see that there is on row 22 there a chunk of stuff called flashpoints? I'm going to start on the top left and work my way across, and then go to the second set and work my way across there. So we're going to start with cultural suppression. And the way this works is I will ask one of you to volunteer to answer the question, and then I get to chip in my bit as well. So for instance, cultural suppression. And remember, we are talking about the Guardians of History. So this is the rebellion from that perspective. The Empire's crackdown on our cultural culture showed there was no choice but to resist. One of you is going to volunteer to say, what ceremony did the Empire interrupt? And what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you volunteer, you'll type your house name where it says name of volunteer house, and then you will type underneath that your answer to the question, and then I'll answer, how did the Empire ruin your ability to use the right? So does anybody want to volunteer which ancient ritual the Empire interrupted? Which ceremony, sorry, not ritual.
And I think they said in the rules, they say, like, if you pick one, then you have to wait until everybody else gets one before you take another one, right? So
yes, yeah.
That sounds like me, but I do like the next one more. So I'm going to pass if somebody else wants to take it.
Well, I had looked ahead on on our house moves. And one of our house moves that I was going to pick was the Grand Feast. So that seems like a natural one there. If
Fine.
that's okay with everyone else.
Oh yeah, look, because we're on the gauntlet, we could spend a lot of time waiting for everyone to say, oh, that's fine, go ahead, go ahead. So yeah, just do it.
Okay.
We are so polite as a community. So if you type in the cursed into that name a volunteer house and then put your answer in, and then I will say, how did the Empire ruin your ability to use this right? And we're talking about the feast, aren't we?
The Grand Feast.
The Grand Feast. They, I think the way they ruined it was they introduced foreign and unclean foods or crops even, which polluted the rite. Okay. Now, I'm going to go to Jason first because he expressed an interest. Rumors. As a desperate resistance fought and died for liberty, you searched for a mystical way to turn the tides.
Mhm.
What sort of ritual were you searching for? Is that the one you were interested in, Jason, for the Shining Path?
Yes.
So-
I'll put my name in there, the Shining Path. And next one is, what sort of ritual were you searching for? I'm thinking how to phrase it. Something to control sunlight. That's very vague. I see the next question is kind of related to it, so I'm not trying to put too much out there.
Well, I mean, the nature of the game is you put some stuff out there and the rest of
Sure.
us build on it.
It's basically like, my priest probably came out and said, the Shining One we must find a way to beseech the mighty, the god to bring the power of the sun against our enemies, something like that.
That's fine, because I think one thing we know already is that when the guardians of history, the wise ones, walked among us, when the revolution came, the rivers and hills rose up to fight beside us.
Exactly.
And so this sounds like you were interested in tying the sun,
Right.
the true Shining One.
Tie the sun to our cause.
How and where did you find the truth of the ritual? I
Hmm.
think there's a no-brainer for that. No, this is mine.
Oh, okay.
There's a no-brainer here. It is the Temple of the Prophet.
Perfect.
So I will type the Temple of the Prophet in there. Okay. Who is interested in dissent? As each house's mystics gathered to understand the ritual, you expressed concern about its costs. What was so horrifying about the action proposed?
Is this referencing the ritual that
we've just described? Yes.
I would volunteer, and again, in classic Gauntlet fashion, we'll
No, you're not allowed to do that. You've just volunteered.
I mean, it just feels appropriate given everything else we've done that they would dissent. I think what's so horrifying, so it looks like what is so horrifying about the action, I think that it's because it ties us all to the Shining Path in a way that they're not comfortable with.
Yes. Yeah. So if you type that in as your house answer, and it says, what alternative do the arbiter propose? The arbiter proposed the reflection of the sunlight places the sun in our hands, not us in its hands. So by all means invoke the sun, but we will deploy it by reflection.
Okay.
The next one is pilgrimage. Your agents, and this one's down to you, Dan.
Yeah, I had a good one for descent, but let me think about this one.
Your agents lead the others in a journey across the land, walking ancient paths and gathering key reagents, which might fit with your expertise.
Yeah.
How did you avoid the Empire's spies and patrols?
I think one idea, I have two ideas. One idea is we just simply were going about the Empire's business. We sort of claimed that we were just simply, we're just gathering materials for more statues of your nobility. And I think another idea that I have is that we were leaning a bit into our newfound metals, which allowed us to keep tabs on where the Empire was as well.
Then by all means, put something like that in that box, because I'm then asked, what distraction did the Arbiter create to ensure the pilgrimage succeeded? I think the wise ones caused roots to undermine some statuary, creating a need for things to repair them. So they provided you with an excuse for this this search. Does that make sense? Okay. Now open season, folks, on sacraments. First one to put their hand up gets sacraments. As the Arbiter prepared to channel the ritual's power, you led the others through its final steps. What more than anyone else did you sacrifice?
I think I can use this for the idea that I had for descent, which was that the ritual required us finding some very rare metals, and the only place we could find them was deep below the Temple of the Prophet. And so it ended up being very dangerous for us to go down there. So we sacrificed many people who went deep in a hidden mine below the Temple of the Prophet. Does that sound right?
Works for me. How was the power used to liberate the land? I think that the enhanced reflection of the Shining One was used to blind the Empire's legions. Yeah, I'm sure there's some biblical precedent for that. That probably involves David and some nasty subgroup.
Ark of the Covenant, maybe.
Okay, solstice. Again, open season, folks, but not Dan. As the new nation searched for identity, the Arbiter declared a celebration to mark the first free solstice. How did the Arbiter use the solstice to bind together the nation under their rule? Hands up.
I'll take that one.
Okay.
I think the Arbiter took hostages from each of us.
Oh, right. Okay. So they took
hostages from each house.
Okay. What cost did they pay to achieve this working? Now we know, don't we, that the guardians are eternal. So the wise ones are eternal. As long as the land exists, they will be here to speak for it. When our heritage was stolen, they walked among us, keeping the stories alive. When the revolution came, the rivers, blah, blah, blah. On the eve of victory, each of the guardians walked into the heart of settlement, planted a seed. Through the trees that grew, each arbiter keeps watch over the citizens. advises through dreams and sends natural disasters against those who attack their lands. Okay, I think that what cost did the arbiter pay? The wise ones were buried beneath the tree plantings.
Can I offer an alternate one?
Oh, go on.
How about that they literally transformed into the trees?
Well, I was going to have them buried beneath the planting, with the
They
hostages,
became the host, so to speak.
and they grew into the tree. Does that?
Yeah.
Were buried beneath the tree plantings along with the hostages, and are believed to live on as the wise trees. Okay with that?
Yeah.
So so the trees then, oh, that's an interesting one. So the wise ones are now the trees. So they may or may not have any kind of corporeal existence outside of those trees. Wow.
And our hostages also suffered the same fate, right?
Exactly, buried with the hostages, and are believed to live on in the wise trees. So each of your each of the major settlements or whatever else that around which you are based has one of these trees, which embody both you, the house, and a wise one. Yeah. Oh, that's sufficiently esoteric. Brilliant. Okay. Landmarks. We go back to the map, and we are interested now in, I'll share the screen in a second. There we go. Okay, I hope you can see the map, because we are now looking at the most recent. I'm going to go back to starting with the Horselords because it's been a while. So the new land. So since the rebellion, which landmark do you want to add? Joe?
I like the idea of one of them is the farthest river kept out of reach by the Empire, but now a tantalizing frontier.
Okay. Do you want to locate that river?
I would like some assistance in locating that river, because I don't want to do it in a way that constrains other stuff, right? I mean, like, so part of me was thinking on the far right, but I'm not sure how the Empire would have so I guess one thought is putting it along the right hand side of the map here on the edge of the steppe, and that the way that the Empire kept it out of reach was that we were in fighting and just keeping us distracted elsewhere in the steppe. Maybe I don't know. I'm
well,
struggling.
I mean, it's not like there wasn't a lot going on. They were shipping some of you off to fight in a jungle, and they were slaughtering your herds.
Yeah.
So maybe they kept it out of your reach because you just didn't have the capacities. There just weren't enough of you or enough of the herds to spread.
Yeah, I'm concerned about putting the farthest river somewhere else, and because it sounds like it's going to be a touch point potentially for, and if we put it right down the middle here, that's going to get ugly. So, and maybe that's okay, but if anybody else has any thoughts, I'm open to it. I like the farthest river, but I'm just, putting that somewhere. I don't want it to overly constrict other people's choices. So.
No, do your thing.
I was thinking it could be part of it could be an offshoot, or it could feed into the border with the Riverlands. I was doodling, but now it kind of looks like a river. So perhaps the Riverlands were avoided by the Empire because they tried to invade there, but it basically was it was so impossible to move troops through that area that it kind of became the Afghanistan of this world. And therefore, the river could be an offshoot of that river, perhaps.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, if you put it, I think if you put it where you were planning to put it, Joe, down the right-hand side, maybe actually shaving off a bit of the steps, just so there's an intriguing area of step on the other side of the river. I will probably connect that to the border river, and somehow link them back to the mountain range, which is where the rivers kind of some rivers ought to originate.
Okay, so is
So
Scribble the best one to do sort of a little
I think
scribbly
so.
line?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No laughing.
Well, in order so nobody laughs and are distracted by other things, let me go next to the forgers, to the Chisel and Mallet. What can you tell me about the new land?
I kind of like the idea of the 7 statues to mark those who defeated the Empire. And my inclination is to not put these in the same place, if that's okay with everyone. And
7 different places if you want.
Yes. So I'm thinking there's one sort of right smack in the middle. And then there are a few others. So what I might do is, instead of having lots and lots of labels, I might just use the symbol of other fortification and put 7 of those around, if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
And
I mean, I'm curious, are these the leaders of houses, or are they representations of the wise ones?
I think it's not consistent, that these are just sort of even sort of heroes that sort of almost came out of the mythology of defeating the Empire, like figureheads of people that we elevated from lots of different houses, and maybe a wise one or two, that kind of thing.
Right. So they're almost symbolic as much as they are figurative of somebody. Fine.
Yes.
Brilliant. Bang, put those around the place, and we'll find a way to represent them in the final version. The Shining Path. What is the landmark related to the new land?
It is the Grand Cathedral. I had already added our capital, so I just rolled that into being the Grand Cathedral. So it's Al-Tariq an-Naib, the Road of the Prophet. So it's down there. You probably see it.
That's fine. Oh, Alex has just gone away.
Oh,
he's back. Right. You worried me for a minute then, Alex, just as I was about to ask you what you want to add as a final landmark.
No, I just had to let the cat in. She was complaining. I would say Shantytown. You've built on a settlement's fringe. And I think I'd like to put it, if that's okay with the Shining Path, to put it on the edge of their capital, since they have influence over each other.
Sure.
So they have allowed the cursed to they have deigned to let them construct a settlement or a shantytown.
Perfect.
On the edge of their city.
Yeah, my culture is very top heavy with priests and missionaries and abbots and whatnot. So people that actually do things would be useful. Not to say those people don't do things, but
fine. Well, I don't know whether you want to use a village marker for that and just nudge it alongside Al-Tariq an-Naib. That would be great. We've sorted the resources out, but I do now need you to tell me whether your resources are dispersed through your community. So everyone, if it's coin, it's the fact that everybody has quite a bit of coin and you can collect it together when you need to. Or is it located somewhere? And in which case, where is it located? And if that requires you to add a town or center to the map, that's fine by me. So so let me go back to the Horselords, to the Jezdec. You have herds and scouts. Are those herds located somewhere, or are they dispersed across the steppe with the people?
I think based on the other choices I've made, both these feel like dispersed to me. So,
Fine. Then in which case you don't have to really write anything in there.
Okay.
The assumption is they're dispersed unless you add a location.
Okay.
Let me come to the Chisel and Mallet. Marble dispersed, land, is the reach. Yeah, fair enough. Well, look, I tell you what, I'm gonna make that dispersed because it's dispersed across a mountain range.
Okay.
You know, and I'll make sure that the slopes of that mountain range are well forested.
Okay.
For your lumber. Yeah.
Well, my thought was that we've got sort of workshops all over the empire, and that the marble and the lumber are sort of stored in those various workshops.
Where,
Does that sound okay?
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So they're on site, wherever that
Yes.
site might be. Fair enough. I get that. What about the shining path? Oh, the wealth is all in the city. Of course it is.
Yeah, the wealth is in El Tariq on Naib, and I'm gonna add Joe. So I'm picturing there's a pressure. My missionaries are trying to get into your land to bring you to the true faith, but you're not for it. So I'm thinking I'm going to add like a town on the border where my missionaries have gathered, and as we begin, they're going to try to make their move, so to speak. How's that sound for you?
Well, I mean, there is a town where the
Oh yeah,
slaughterhouse
we
was
could do,
located.
yeah, we could do that. Sure. So maybe I'll just sure.
Do you want to
maybe
name
they're
that?
there.
Do you want to name
Yeah.
that town, Joe?
Yeah.
Jason can name it if he wants to.
As long as it doesn't have one of those foreign-sounding names.
Yeah, it's not going to have one of my names, one of my
Right.
Arabic names. It's probably going to have something more Russian. Let's call it Kiev.
I mean, as
Or
long as people are
Fantasy
okay
Kiev.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there might be a point of you know, if we end up with a conflict around there, that might be tricky.
Sure. I'll think of something Russian-y here in a minute.
Fine, something grad.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So they're going to be located, ready to proselytize among the steppe nomads
Yeah.
of the Jezdec. And then the question is, for the cursed, Alex, dispersed, or are there, you know, is your leadership, your organizational hub, is that in the shanty town, or is it dispersed across wherever you find the cursed?
No, it's dispersed.
Okay. Morale. I mean, it sounds like almost a stupid question, but you know, are the people who maintain your morale in one place, or again, is this just something that runs across your culture?
Once again, dispersed.
And likewise, recruits.
Yes.
Fine. The only difference it makes is that when they're in one place, they are vulnerable. Perhaps I should have said that before.
Or maybe recruits could be located in the shanty town,
Fine.
because that's where most of them live, where the majority of them live.
And then you're commissioned out of there to fulfill these middle management, middle order rank jobs across the land. That's okay.
Well, I was thinking that the cursed could not. They're just kind of there, but they don't have any kind of unified structure. But by the fact that they are located in greater number in this shanty town, they have created some form of thing there.
Fine. I think the last thing I want to say about the map is you'll notice that I've put an indicative kind of scale on the top, just to give us some idea of how big this is. Is 1 week on foot, which probably means that it takes probably eight weeks to walk from one side of the land to the other. Is that a scale you're comfortable with?
Sure.
I mean, it's kind of just to give us a feel for how big this is. Is that okay? Fine. Then let us return to the Arbiter tab, please. Because now, the only thing I think I get to do on my own is down the bottom there on row 50, customs. I think I like the idea of primitivism. So as a style, the representatives of the wise ones on Earth, body paints, Hessian, and wooden crowns. That would seem to fit with the general kind of feel for them. And it sounds much more pagan than these rather overdressed members of the Shining Path. In terms of ceremonies, a bloodletting to pay back the land for its bounty, a feast to mark the beginning of each season, a recitation of the lives of the ancestors, walking the border ritualistically. I think that given that we've built the great feast and the return of the feast, I think I'm going to have a feast to mark the beginning of each season. And that might well be where we begin play, actually, when I think about it. And laws. Now, these are things that if you break, you have a mechanical impact on the state of play. I think that I'm going to go with, because it kind of fits with some of the, I cannot imagine the forgers, the Chisel and Mallet, sharing their lore with other people. And while the Shining Path will happily recruit worshippers, I'm not sure they're keen on spreading their lore. So I'm going to say that the wise ones have laid down a rule that no house may teach a ritual from their traditions to another house without their permission. Yeah? Okay.
May I ask a clarifying question about that?
You can.
So is that going to, would missionaries, is that going to create a challenge in the fiction that we've started to develop of missionaries proselytizing to, is that teaching a ritual to another group?
No, I don't think it is. I think it's claiming recruits from wherever those missionaries go, recruits to the church, believers, for want of a better word. Yeah. Okay. Now we come back to the last bit of work for you lot, I think, which is doctrine and lifestyle. It's up there on row 15 to about 20 something. And again, I'm going to go back round to the Jezdec to start with. Doctrine, which of those? Each of them has some mechanical weight.
Sorry, I was muted. All right, so doctrine. So I've got ride fast to any summons, always prepared for war, and the freedom of the saddle.
The way I'm going to do this, I'm going to come to each of you for doctrine and then come back round to lifestyle.
I've been looking at these and they kind of, as you go through them, I'm concerned that they might be mildly contradictory at points, but I'll start with always prepared for war.
Right. I mean, that's good because it means that those dispersed scouts are still available to you, even though that they're dispersed. Let's go to the Chisel and Mallet. What about your doctrine?
I've chosen resilient infrastructure. So this is basically I can donate surplus towards Arbiter's project, and that gives me an advantage. I feel like even though this didn't quite match up their personalities, they've actually learned quite a bit from the Cursed in terms of efficiency.
And practicality.
And practicality, yes.
If a project fails, recover one of the donated surpluses. Great. Then the Shining Path. What can you tell me about your doctrine?
I think I'm going to take comforters. I think that's the closest bits. When you provide meaningful aid to those in peril, gain influence on whoever caused their hurt. If you break the Arbiter's laws, you don't lose favor. And the law would be what you just said about the
exactly
we can't give our ritual. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I can break that. Yeah.
Okay. And what about the Cursed?
They're going to pick communal solidarity. When you comfort a group suffering misfortune, erase one of their needs, which you have as a surplus. Optionally, move their favor a step towards yours. Since I have 3 surpluses, I think that works.
Fine, fine. I wonder how long they'll last. Let's go back round to the Jezdec. What about your lifestyle?
Well, I was originally going to choose nomadic remnants, but the mechanical benefit is I think I already have. So, you know, you get surplus scouts if you don't already have it. I'm gonna do finest mercenaries. Our house, yeah, finest
Which
mercenaries.
will give you surplus wealth if you're currently fighting someone else on someone else's behalf. So just so the rest of you know, the Jezdec are up for hire. Let's go to the Chisel and Mallet. What about your lifestyle?
I was intrigued by the Jeweled City, where we've made a seat, my seat of that, the seat of my house, a thing of beauty. But I feel like we've got so many interesting locations on the map. I don't know that we will often zoom in to that. So instead, I've chosen a craft for every season. I travel from settlement to settlement, sharing skills in a festival of arts and crafts. We all know what an arts fair is. And I can get some advantage of learning new crafts when I go to new places.
Fine, fine. Then the Shining Path lifestyle.
City of Pilgrims. Your center of power is also a center of pilgrimage, drawing believers from far and wide. If I have a favor of 0 or more, I can gain a surplus.
Oh, wow. Right. Wealth or prestige.
Yeah. In fact,
Everyone's going to the Shining Path city.
Before I forget, maybe I'll add that now because we're going to start a season, right? I'll take prestige. Because is wealth and coin separate, you think, or that's more or less the same?
Let me just check.
I was just
Coin.
looking in the book, and wealth is not on the list. Coin is.
Alter it to coin.
Okay.
Because there's more than one inconsistency.
Yeah. So basically, then I'll start with prestige in addition to the coin that I already have.
Okay. Your family are at the forefront of society. They're respected, feared, or beloved. Depends. Yeah, fine. Okay. And the Cursed. What can you tell us about your lifestyle, Cursed?
I'm just blah, 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 blah. I'm just looking up the Read the Wind.
Read the Wind is the kind of find out stuff about other places.
Okay.
So if you were interested in getting a surplus, Read the Wind would be, what do your agents, what do people on the ground tell you about where you could find that surplus? And that allows you to then to put surplus on the map other than where it already exists, for instance.
Sorry, I lost the page. I think I will pick. I will pick Stand Proud. As you integrate into settlements across the land, you stay stridently proud of your culture. When someone calls in a debt on you, you get advantage on the hold together roll to resist it. When you fall into crisis, erase all influence anyone else has on you.
Fine, fine. I mean, to be honest, all of this will how these will interact in play. Pick anything, it'll get interesting, I think. But that's a stonking one. Okay, then I simply now have to choose the Arbiter's starting move. So if we go back to the Arbiter, Patron of the Wise, the Library of the Ancient, once more we return. When a house brings an artifact to them containing great power or foreign magics, the arbiter will hide the artifact away in their storehouses and reward the house with surplus coin, prestige, or morale. I think that fits. I think that the wise ones, representatives on Earth, have a warehouse full of boxes somewhere, where stuff that is too powerful for you mere mortals to handle are placed. I am going to suggest that we stop there and we do character generation next time, and get into our first. The arbiters will hold court for the first time. I'm imagining that that is going to be a rotating, so they'll go to where the tree is, and representatives from each house will be called to that location to have while the wise ones and their representatives hold court. And then we'll see where that takes us in terms of maybe managing a zoom in before we finish session 2. Okay.
So
we
won't pick house moves yet.
Oh, sorry. Yes, house moves by all means. Sorry. Yes, there was. Sorry, you're quite right. Horselords, what intrigues you?
Hit and run for sure. And then I'm thinking about Strength of the Mare, which is our herdmasters are a mystery cult, which fits nicely in this whole. So I think
everyone's a bit mystical.
Yeah, I'm gonna take those two.
Okay. What about Chisel and Mallet?
I chose skill beyond compare. Everything that I build gets a reliable tag, and Bones of the Earth, which means I get a ritual that allows me to draw upon the power of the earth to help me.
Great. What about the Shining Path?
I'm going to take Heretic Doctrine, Celestial, and then what's the other one called? I think Word Travels Fast, although I haven't completely decided on that second one yet.
If think about this, we can pick up the details next time.
Yeah. I think that's probably what I'll do.
And family, what about the Cursed?
Well, I've already mentioned the Grand Feast, so that's
You
the first
have.
one. And the second one then is Fresh Eyes, which is the people of this land have biases and perspectives they may not even be aware of. You're able to provide him. Yeah,
like it takes a good supply chain to build a statue. Brilliant. Okay, so there we are. I'm going to leave assets until next time because I think I want to talk about assets in terms of character creation. So we will leave it there. I'd like to do a quick stars and wishes, if that's okay, just to see if there's anything that is kind of worrying you or anything you want to see next time. Let me start in the order I can see you. Joe, any stars, any wishes?
At this point, I just think stars to everybody for, and Alan, especially you, for taking this on. My brain hurts just a tiny bit right now, and you're the one who has to keep it all together. So I'm thinking about needing a bigger monitor to see all of this all at once. And so, but yeah, no, and I think wishes is just, I'm just looking forward to seeing how this all how it all comes together, right? Like, we're seeing all these little pieces and, but no concerns or anything other than, as you're picking these moves and all these different things, like if the game goes a certain way, one of my concerns is like, have you ended up having if you've picked things that just never will come into play, right? So, but again, I'm not that worried about it because we'll get into it. So
yeah, I mean, I think there's two things there. One, bias your actions towards moves that play, and if it looks like you made a duff choice, we'll change it.
Perfect.
We'll play into these houses as we play into characters. Alex, any highlights, any concerns, any roses, any stars, any stars, any wishes?
Well, stars definitely to you, Alan, for this character keeper, which is just the amount of work that you've put into it is truly staggering. I feel humbled and shamed as a GM myself.
Well, I'm glad you've got off to a good start today. Then no, that's really kind of you. Thank you.
Yeah, and wishes. Yeah, I mean, you know, just to see how things go when we actually get into the thick of it is something I look
Yeah.
forward to.
Yeah, and I think that's always the mystery. I mean, this really is play to find out, isn't it? Dan, any stars, any wishes?
I think Alan, yeah, all the kudos that you're getting are well deserved. This is just a massive effort, and I'm eternally grateful for you throwing this on the calendar and getting this going. And stars to everyone else for really leaning in and creating a really, really cool world that I'm super excited to play in. I would say if I have any wish for next time, I don't know that I've got anything in particular. I'm just excited to create some characters and start seeing how they interact in this world. So.
Yeah, I think that's one we'd all endorse. Finally, Jason, any stars, any wishes?
Nothing much more than what people said. I like that we've got some genesis of some alliances and conflicts between the different factions that we've sort of laid out there. Those will be very juicy to play off of, so I'm excited about that. Wishes wise, I'm glad you decided to tape the whole or record the whole thing, and I would be very interested in myself to go back and watch it this week if you post it, because you know, I'm sure you've got information overload, but I think we all probably do too. And I think that when I go back and I watch something, you know, it definitely comes together a lot more than in the moment. So yeah, if you get a chance, I'd love to watch it.
Well, let me ask now then if people are content for me to publish this widely, or whether you just want the links yourselves.
I have no preference.
Fine, then I will bung this up on the usual YouTube channel. It'll crop up in the Gauntlet feed. Thank you for that. In terms of stars from me, yeah, thank you. I think these are really interesting houses. I think there's some you wove together what in the rules are fairly kind of, you know, small, tiny hints into a really kind of rich tapestry that we must do our best to explore fully. Thank you, Dan. I noticed there's a notes link, which I think everyone's going to want to read. Thank you for that. And I've also added Dan's link to Russian town names to the lines and veils. So if you want to, in your own time, add some names to any of these settlements or any of these locations, do that. I'm going to start kind of messing around with a kind of background map using the piece of software that I've forgotten the name of. Never mind. Wonderdraft, and I'll share that with you as it develops, just to get your feel for whether I'm interpreting our outline map reasonably. Just because I love a good map. And my wish is, yeah, I just want to. I'm desperately not wanting to rush, and yet I want to rush so we get to see these things interacting. And I will see you next time to make the next step in that process. Okay. So let me stop the